For everyone, there is one, we do have one kind of special addition here. Let's make sure, yeah. If Sammy, if you're still willing to share a bit on your experience in kind of seed systems in Kenya, it would be a privilege to get to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, Jared, and everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity and for being part of this summit, 2-day summit, with all those wonderful speakers across the 2 days. It's so inspiring to hear people talking about seed saving and preservation of heirloom seeds across the world. So, yeah, I don't know, Jared, what you want me to say, but we'll share briefly about our seed saving or heirloom seed saving in Kenya right now. I would briefly give a short, really short about myself, story about how I came to be associated with sustainable food systems. I grew up in a small farm in the central part of Kenya with my family who are all farmers, and we used to grow most of our food to feed for sustenance in our family, save seeds from the crops we used to grow. That is way back in early 1980s. And as I grew up, I could see all the transition, like the changes of the way the farming was done in our, particularly in our area, because we are a community of farmers, small scale farmers. So I could tell, like, for example, we used to save our own seeds from I could see our parents and grandparents doing that, saving the best seeds for planting in the upcoming seasons, sharing seeds with our neighbors from our community. And that really worked perfectly well. And we thought that is the part of the system. We were just young and helping our parents in the garden. So in close to 1980s, late 1980s, we started, I could tell there was a difference in the way we used to farm, because our parents will say that's the time Kenya introduced hybrid seeds, especially grains like corn. We usually call it maize in Kenya, which is one of the popular meals or food for Kenyans, because we eat a lot of corn and beans. So corn was one of the hybrid seeds which were introduced to our country. And I remember one was called Pioneer. Pioneer, that was the variety and the name of, and everyone in our small village and community, there was a lot of marketing and sensitization from the government, like, don't use those traditional seeds anymore. We have a seed here. It's called Pioneer. We produce a lot of food for you and for the community. And everyone adopted most of these seeds, and they came along, I came to realize they came along with chemical fertilizers, and the government will distribute fertilizers to our farmers. So the yield was so good. You could feel like everyone was putting fertilizers in the field and grow. We could see the corn has a lot of vigor and producing a lot of food for us. But after a short time, in the long run, you could tell the soils, which were so good, were now not producing enough to feed us. We had all the time, our parents had to go to the stores and buy seeds all the time, buy fertilizers, as we were using animal manure and compost, which we used to like kind of lay those maize stalks in the farms. And it was a very traditional way of growing food. So that kept me thinking, and I had an opportunity to come to Ecology Action for 8 months. I am happy to have known Matt Druno, who just presented. He was one of our teacher, and we have Rachel Britton, and Rachel Lassie, who is part of this meeting too, who are my mentors and teachers. And that's when I came to Ecology Action, and through the internship, we were talking about seed saving and open pollinated seeds. And that's how I developed I developed that urge of saving seeds and making sure. And then I realized that's where now the problem in local food systems in our community, that's where we started to realize like we are not sustainable enough. We are dependent on chemicals. We are dependent on buying seeds all the time. And over time, we lost these heirloom seeds. I can remember we used to plant these tubers like cassava in our farms, which did very well. Sweet potatoes were doing so good in our soils. We had also very nice heirloom sorghum and millet in our fields. They no longer, after a time like 10 years or so, growing GMOs and other types of hybrid seeds, we started losing these heirloom varieties and locally acceptable, because we have like 50 tribes in Kenya, and every tribe in Kenya is depending on their locality. There is some type of seed which is suited or the type of culturally that they feel like this is the type of food that we grow for our own area. And it usually it was very connected to those tribes. And we started losing those varieties over time. GMO was introduced like 15 years ago or so, or even 20 years. And the government has been very critical and even applying laws which it's criminal even for a Kenyan farmer, smallholder farmer, right now to share seeds. That feels like it's one of our rights. As our community rights, we have been doing that for a long time. But now the government, through the big tech corporations, passing laws in the government that it's criminal to share safe, they call them uncertified seeds, which we have been doing for generations and generations. So it's a big challenge right now in Kenya that you can't share seeds. It's criminal. You can be sentenced to 10 years in prison or $10,000 fine or both. And that was passed in 2012. I would say it's not really into being implemented, but it restricts the farmers on, you can't do any sales. We only do share seeds at our own farm level, where if you are caught, you can be taken to jail. That's how it is right now. And that has really affected the food security, because they feel the food security and also food systems have been altered in different communities in Kenya. And the introduction of GMOs, which was done some years back, and late last year, the new administration lifted the ban of GMOs, importation of GMOs into our country. We have no problem with GMOs, but it affects our way of living, the way we used to value our food at the tribe level, community level. And I know there's some efforts by non-governmental organizations which are now teaching farmers and sensitizing them, telling them like these heirloom or traditional seeds we used to grow were really suited for our soils, for our climate, for our way of life. It's a part of our culture. Now there are efforts by non-governmental organizations like GBIAC. I know Matt Druno and Rachel, and both Rachel know GBIAC is part of Ecology Action. They are representative of Ecology Action in Kenya and Africa. So they have a seed bank of a collection of heirloom seeds across Kenya, whereby farmers can come and save and borrow seeds, exchange seeds, go and plant them, multiply them. But GBIAC can't call that a seed bank. If they call it a seed bank, then the government will be on them. Like, you can't do a seed bank in Kenya. We call them seed bank, but right now GBIAC is calling it seed library. Like, it's a learning center for seeds. It's not like it's a business. Because if he says it's a business, that the government will come and run it down or close it up. So GBIAC and other seed savers network of Kenya is a big one is on sensitizing farmers on starting small community seed banks where they can share seeds and amongst themselves. So now we have some accelerated efforts from different people who value our seeds, heritage, and all that. And farmers are doing that in the small way. We know it's illegal, but what people are pegging on is the Constitution of Kenya says it upholds the culture and the culture of every Kenyan. You can't deny us rights to culturally do what we used to do. So that's the only avenue we feel like we can be able to save seeds at our own level. But the laws are there not to sell. You can't start a shop or a store of selling seeds in Kenya. You can only do it in the most under the table, if that's the way it is. So seed saving has been culturally accepted and has been part of our life, part of the small scale farmers. But now the government, through these big multicultural or internationals, bringing these punitive laws which are prohibiting distribution or sales of any seeds. Like for myself, when I went back in 2016 through the mentorship of Ecology Action and GBIAC, I started my own small farm just outside of Nairobi. And you can really tell how people are really disconnected from knowing how seed is produced, like how much Bruno was talking about, like seeing the full cycle of planting a seed, not only eating the product, but also making sure you see the life cycle of how, like when we were young, we could leave some corn plants in the field so that now we can be able to harvest them for seeds. We used to selectively, deliberately leave them in the field, but nowadays everyone harvests everything just for sale. So there is that disconnect and people not knowing that we had our own heritage and we had our own culture of saving seeds. So that's the thing also I'm doing in a very small scale, like making sure if I grow a certain type of seed, which is heirloom variety or those native seeds for our communities, from our different communities, I don't have a big seed bank, but I save part of those seeds and encourage farmers to also save seeds, uh, share seeds with other communities, even if it means they sell them, but they are still maintaining that seed heritage. So we do that in our community in a small way, and also work closely with other collaborators in aspect of seed saving. But GMO was lifted 2 years ago. That was surprising to us, as we knew they were distributed and other seeds were distributed in Kenya. But lifting the ban now opens the doors for importation and exportation of different kind of seeds to our community, and altering that way of growing our own food, like which were culturally accepted from every tribe in Kenya. So generally, that's how the situation is in our country. Back in Kenya, we have people who are really fighting for our smallholder farmers, fighting for our seeds, making sure we save seeds, um, and make that connection between food production and seed saving, and making sure the farmers know the need of saving those seeds in our communities.
So much, Sammy, for sharing that really important story and information.
Any question, maybe comment?
Matt, I see you have your hand up and
Yeah. Thank you, Sammy. It's so good to see you. And thank you for everything you're doing. I know that politics everywhere on the planet tends to divide people. I think that's kind of the point, as far as I can tell at this point. But do you see amongst the 50 plus different tribes in Kenya and politics in Kenya dividing people? Do you see a potential for like an agrarian or farmer-based agricultural movement to push for seed sovereignty, seed security, and the right to save your own seed and trade your own seed and sell your own seed? Do you see any kind of hope for unity amongst the people in Kenya to stand up for that?
Yeah, sure. I have been involved in some of these advocacy for seed sovereignty in Kenya, and I have seen a kind of a movement and awareness amongst the farmers. Like now the era is wait. Now we used to have this type of seeds, and now we don't have them anymore. It's becoming like a reality, like we are losing our heritage. So there's that drive and people wanting to make sure they have their seed back and eating the food which really feels like it's from our own culture and all that.
Yeah, and I know I've never directly experienced it, but I've heard many stories and different examples, from cotton to maize to other crops, that your yields tend to go up when you use those seeds, not necessarily because of the seed themselves, but because of the package of fertilizers and all those inputs that you were saying that come with that seed, which create a cycle of dependency in many ways. Not just you need to buy those fertilizers to have success with that type of seed, but also it destroys organic matter and the life in the soil, which causes a chemical dependency on those inputs. So I'm curious, is there a challenge with that convincing the farmers in your region to go back to an open pollinated or heirloom variety that's traditional, that may yield less without all of those fertilizers? Have you seen that kind of challenge, or have you seen people really embracing these traditional varieties in certain circumstances?
Yeah, there is a big challenge because the government is always deliberate to make sure what they feel is good for them. They always convince the farmers, and it's not very easy to convince the farmers otherwise, because the government is using all their means, even in advertisement, and making sure they distribute seeds for free, so that now farmers can make trials in their farms. And getting people back to what they used to do before was like 5 years ago was very hard, because they felt, oh, I have a package of seeds, I have fertilizers from the government. But in the long run, after they see a lot of produce, but later the soils become the soils can't produce anymore. So they realize, no, I think this thing is not sustainable enough. So we think going forward, people have started to realize they look like they are giving me us a lot of food, but in the long run, we are losing soil fertility. We are losing our seeds and all that. So I think it's something that it's coming up slowly, but not everyone is ready to go back, but in a very slow way.
Thank you. Santi Sana.
Karibu.
Anyone else have any questions for Sammy? Yep. Jamie.
Yeah, it seems as though this is the larger issue all over the world, the privatization of seed, and in Iraq, in the wake of the Iraq War, Iraqi farmers lost their heritage varieties in the same way that Kenya did, with the government requiring certain seeds and encouraging American package of chemical agriculture. Since the 1970s, the European community has restricted people growing and trading heirloom seeds to a certain list that they established that meant the disappearance of lots of traditional varieties. And in the US now, we've got the open source seed initiative that's really been trying to counter the privatization of seed and the stealing of seed by corporations. Are your communities able to connect with any kind of international movement to help organize with these larger organizations like the Open Source Seed Initiative to lend more support to your efforts?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are some organizations which support that movement of seed saving. I don't have their names, but I know there are organizations outside our country which are supporting the saving of seeds and seed banks initiatives back in our communities and our country.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm looking in chat. Right. If not, thank you again, Sammy. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Jared, and everyone.